right, Tom, you can take the mask off now.
Oh, that's better.
It looks like that smell has gone.
Yes, it was a bit strange, wasn't it?
Yes. That strange smell, I believe, was Atvod at work.
Oh, dear.
Have you heard of Atvod?
Vaguely.
Yes, well, let me tell you, we are not talking about that strange Frankenstein-esque creature from Carry On Screaming. Not at all. Hold on. Who's that over there? I recognise that face. Do you recognise that face there?
Yes.
I'm sure.
It's
George W. Lexy. Good evening, Lexy.
Hello.
I didn't know you were in disguise this evening. Goodness me.
Yes, I am.
So we've been talking about Atvod. Who are Atvod?
Well, the UK column have been targeted by Atvod, the authority for video on-demand services, as they consider that our friends in Plymouth are in competition with the mainstream media. So we wonder, what shows is DoomWatch in competition with on the major channels? Watchdog? Question time. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Cowabunga? Or Atvod?
Cowabunga, Atvod. That sounds like the right sort of thing to me. Well, so let us get this straight, just in case anyone is any doubt what is going on. You'll no longer find the archive of previous episodes of DoomWatch on YouTube, as they are now bowing down to the god that is Atvod. And this is not just going to affect the UK column. This is going to affect anyone who has an account on YouTube. Because, of course, on YouTube, they don't call them accounts, they call them channels. What an excellent money-making exercise this could well be. But if they... Surely, they wouldn't do that, would they? Let's find out as we take on another DoomWatch. Hello, good evening, and welcome. No, that's not David Frost, and it's certainly not Ian R. Crane. It is me, Alex G, on DoomWatch. Yes, the dreadful smell of Atvod is something that we thought we had to cover at the start of the show, because they're going to say this is very much a television-like programme, aren't they? Well, it's not television, and it's not a programme. This is a radio show direct from Peterborough in the United Kingdom, with pictures added. So there we go. If anyone is in any doubt how you categorise us, it is radio with pictures. And our guest this evening, I'm just checking if Uncle Tom is getting the microphones in the right place, and a pair of headphones is being thrust into his hand as we speak. See, this is the thing. Doing things live and direct like this, we have to do all this fiddle-faddle in the background. So joining us this evening is Dr. Graham Downing. Good evening, Graham. And thank you very much for joining us live and direct here. It's only our second time that we have had a guest in the studio. So I think we ought to start off right at the top of the list, which people are going to say, well, doctor in the field of functional medicine. So what do we mean by functional medicine?
Functional medicine is natural medicine, but it's kind of natural medicine in essence. It's really natural medicine doctors that are trained to a very, very high standard in analysis. They do kind of the things that the normal doctors do in terms of blood analysis and looking at statistics of illness and epidemiology and all the rest of it. But we bring to bear natural treatments.
Right.
We want to use really drugs unless they're absolutely necessary, and obviously that's managed through the normal GP and all the normal consultants. So yeah, so that's it. So we kind of similar, but we have a different approach.
Okay, well, Graham, while we introduce our text jockey, we'll put the camera over that direction. Here's Lexi with us. It is not George W. Bush. Just need to get Tom to get the microphone nearer to you, basically, and turn the headphones up because you can't hear yourself through the headphones, and cancel the milk if you could at the same time, Tom, and then I don't have to have the microphone right up at the highest level possible on the blue microphone, which may still be a little bit too far away, but we shall see. It's certainly, I'm right up at 11, as they say. So, so Lexi, a good weekend ahead, or?
Yes, I had a great weekend.
And there's a good one ahead as well? Yes. Obviously, you were missed last week, and, well,
I know,
there we go.
I missed you all.
So, the routine that everybody knows, we have the Lexi here waiting for you to give your feedback to what Dr. Graham Downing is saying today. There's some interestingly different material here, which I know you are all going to enjoy. Anyway, so get firing your messages over to Lexi. Meanwhile, back with me, we shall see if we're more in the zone with the microphone. And we wanted to start off with this particular story, which is one that has been doing sort of the email rounds. By the way, did you see the badge? I said to Tom I would do this. Did you see the badge? Because we now are officially Shadow. There you go, Shadow. Good close-up there. Is that a good close-up? Yes. That is, of course, the Supreme Headquarters ATVOD Defence Organisation. So if you want to know where Shadow is, it's right here. So there we go. The news from What Doctors Don't Tell You magazine. A concerted letter-writing campaign by a handful of very vociferous self-styled skeptics has managed to convince Tesco that customers are complaining about what doctors don't tell you, and the store chain has just agreed to withdraw the magazine from the shelves. These were not legitimate complaints, but were the result of several calls to action by a few sceptical websites to a small band of very devoted and fairly fanatical followers. This is part of a 20-month concerted campaign by Simon Singh of a Sense About Science and a variety of ragtag organisations like the Nightingale Collaboration to ban or crush what doctors don't tell you. Singh & Co. have called COMAG, the distributors of the magazine, multiple times, orchestrated letter-writing campaigns to all the store chains that carry the magazine, harassed dozens of their advertisers by reporting them to the ASA, the Advertising Standards Authority, sent their foot soldiers to hide the magazines on the shelves of stores, and attempted to destroy What Doctors Don't Tell You's Google ranking. And one of their websites was even mysteriously hacked into. Well, that happens to DoomWatch as well. Strange that, isn't it? They don't engage in open or legitimate dialogue, only innuendo and bully boy tactics on their social network sites. So, Simon Singh is busy these days tweeting his supporters to write to Tesco to thank them for not stocking the magazine. And all this because they don't want you to have a choice about the information you have about your health care. They believe that you should only have access to one sort of health information, the information that ridicules alternative medicine of all persuasions and embraces conventional medicine as currently practiced. They believe that they have the right to dictate to you the forms of healthcare you have access to. They claim to be in favour of free speech in science, but only the information they deem acceptable for you to read. The skeptics have a loyal following, but there are tens of thousands more who support What Doctors Don't Tell You and their work. Tesco will reconsider if they hear from customers who want to buy What Doctors Don't Tell You in their stores. I detect another campaign. So we're going to be busy with campaigns. One, getting into ATVOD's face about what they're doing. But if you do buy What Doctors Don't Tell You magazine at Tesco, you believe in free speech and freedom of choice in healthcare, or you believe that Tesco should continue to stock the magazine, please write to customer services and tell them exactly why. That's customer.service@tesco.co.uk. That's customer.service@tesco.co.uk. So happy to help What Doctors Don't Tell You magazine in this bizarre state of affairs. Graham, in terms of What Doctors Don't Tell You magazine and what's going on here, does any of this surprise you?
No. I mean, they're just rolling out their plan, aren't they? And, you know, there's a hand behind all this, and you guys are kind of more expert at that side of it than me. You know, we've been warning patients for a long time. And as I said earlier, you know, before we went on air, you know, many years ago, you'd speak to patients and you say, look, you know, this is happening, that's happening, and they'd kind of look at you a bit sort of vague and a bit sort of strange. Now they're coming in and they're saying, well, yeah, I heard that from someone else, and we have a receptionist, and we were talking about something like this, and she turned around and said, well, my dad said that. And so I think people are starting to get the message that maybe there's dots that are joining up here, and you know, with something called Codex Elementaris, which I'm sure your listeners and viewers, UK Column and all the rest of it, I think they'll know a lot about that. So these things are just, you know, and you've got these different puppets who get up, and Mr. Singh is obviously one of those. He's probably well-intentioned, but I mean, there are studies on this. You've only got to look in the British Medical Journal and things like this, and they effectively say that most of the literature that comes out from the pharmaceutical industry is pretty biased and pretty much not worth the drop. So, you know, you can. There's a double standard here. You know, there's no level playing field. On the one hand, they're removing information that's actually quite important. It's nice to have balanced information, and it is reasonably balanced. And on the other hand, they're allowing the promotion of fraudulent research. I mean, that's not my opinion. That's the opinion of what they're pretty much saying themselves. So, you know,
it's going to be a crazy state of affairs for people not within the profession to be able to actually get their head around. I mean, in terms of people who know what's going on, is your average GP now up to speed with what's going on, or are they still subservient to the agenda as previously established?
I mean, it's really, I know many GPs and consultants, and I teach quite a few of them actually. So, and what you find is that really the vast majority just do their job. And I was speaking to a GP the other day, and she actually said, you know, I'm sick to death of giving these injections and vaccinations and all the rest of it. But she said whoever they are, they want their numbers. And that's her job. And what can she do? She can't just stop, because that's how she earns a living. And interesting enough, I've had many debate and many discussion. I'm not someone who goes out the way to try and pick a fight or an argument, but obviously if I'm put in the corner, I'll speak my mind. And you know, I've had many a heated discussion with consultants and consultant paediatricians, and literally, when you just put the evidence in front of them, their argument, they last about 5 minutes, and then they sort of buckle over and say, well, actually, we don't really understand it. And I say, well, if you don't understand something, say it's vaccination or something, well, then why are you doing it? You need to really look at the research, and you know, and I think there was in is it not Nutrition News? I'm trying to think of the actual website. I'll think about it in a second. They brought something out recently, and there was, I think it was the last few days actually. I should have mentioned it before. And there's someone presently undergoing investigation and probably trial at the moment for fraudulent research to do with all the vaccines and stuff. Now, this stuff is the important stuff, because this stuff actually does end up causing damage, and the information, the research is there. So Mr. Singh and that lot need to be concentrating on their own house first before they start looking elsewhere for something that really is not going to cause a great deal of harm. So, you know, even if they're in their wildest dreams, nutrition done correctly, vitamins, minerals, you know, it powers into, you know, nothing by comparison to what happens on a weekly basis in terms of injury and death from medication. So they need to sort that out first before they look at elsewhere. That's my view anyway.
Well, I find this incredible dichotomy. They basically say none of these alternative medicines or alternative approaches actually do anything.
Right.
And then they're trying to ban them. And it's sort of like, well, you know, are you just going to fall back on the fact that you're protecting people from snake oil salesmen? Seems to be about their own defence for what they're doing.
I mean, you know, there's many examples you can use. I just spoke about vaccination and all the rest of it, but there's no study. There's no real study on vaccination. There's no proper study looking at it that supports its use. There's certainly no long-term study, and they tend to cut them off before the kind of quote-unquote side effects can happen. I mean, they don't last very long. And like I said, this is not my opinion. This is what's in the journals themselves. And, you know, the scientists doing the work and the doctors writing up, they're criticising this stuff as well. And that you don't even hear about that anywhere. No GP tells you about that. And recently at the AV5 conference that your listeners may know about, I spent about an hour and 15 minutes showing research, you know, and it was a little bit tedious because there's lots of information, but I thought it was important for people to see. And we showed years and years and years of this research showing other methods, other ways of dealing with these things, which work very, very well. And not just a few people. We're talking testing on millions and millions of people. And I think you remember that. I think you was in the audience for that, Alex, and you saw that.
Absolutely.
And yet that's not mentioned. So, you know, the public has to be aware that they're being played a bit here. You know, there's not an honest card being dealt here. There's certainly nowhere near a level playing field. You know, we're kind of like the England in the World Cup at the moment. You know, so
I like how we won our last game 0-0. I thought that was spectacular.
They did great, Well, I remember the first one when they won it. I was very little at the time, but so I briefly remember everything.
I should remember it, but it's just beyond my realm of comprehension. Just looking at the time, so time for a short one, as it were, from I had to go to the Express and Star. To Express and Star, based in Wolverhampton. I can use the right voice now. Great. And this, they said, Public Health Minister Jane Ellison has acknowledged that the government no longer has day-to-day control of the NHS. The Conservative minister said, as a result of the sweeping reforms under former Health Secretary Andrew Lansley, we pretty much gave away control of the NHS. But Labour accused ministers of washing their hands of responsibility for our NHS. In comments recorded at a private meeting of the Tory Reform Group, Ms Ellison is heard praising Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt, Mr Lansley's successor, for doing a brilliant job and turning the narrative around. In the recording leaked to The Observer, she said, I don't know how much of any you realise, but with the Lansley Act, we pretty much gave away control of the NHS, which means that the thing that most people talk about in terms of their health, the NHS, we have some important strategic mechanisms, but we don't really have day-to-day control. At the same meeting on the 8th of June, she said that from a political point of view, it is a bit like being on a high wire without a net at times. It can be quite exciting. The Department of Health. What am I thinking of? I'm thinking of the Smurfs, aren't I? The Department of Health said that the reforms had given greater powers to doctors and nurses and insisted that ministers can and do grip the system when it needs it. Grip the system by the throat, by the sound of it. Graham, I mean, what's your analysis of what she said there? I mean, is it the fact the NHS is now not in the hands of who it should be?
Well, I don't think anyone knows what the NHS is, to be fair. I mean, it's such a big monster, isn't it? I mean, it's such a... I mean... you know, to you and I living in this country, it's a fantastic thing. Obviously, it's got, you know, warts and all. It's not perfect. And the doctors, and I have huge respect for the doctors who work in the NHS. I'm certainly not anti-allopathic medicine, allopathic being the normal GPs and consultants. No way. I think they do an incredible job. Unfortunately, I think the system... certainly their system of how they practice medicine isn't. I think that could be changed, and we can talk about that. I think my understanding is, and obviously I'm informed by, is that, and it's the same as in all these areas like education, all the rest of it. There's someone mucking it up. There's someone going in there and causing havoc. Maybe not so much in education. That's a slightly different story. But in terms of the NHS, in order that one day maybe we all turn around and said, we've had enough now, bring in that private stuff. And then quite a few people can then start taking a big chunk of that £1 billion pie. That's my understanding. You know, and within it, you get some incredible people. You get some really hard-working nurses and doctors. And, of course, then you get the other side that we all want to complain about and aren't so hard-working. So, I mean, it's just, you know, it's a microcosm of normal life. So I don't necessarily... am down on the NHS just because we've met a bad doc or a bad nurse. But I think if you look at it, it's been absolutely and completely mismanaged. I don't believe it's the fault of the doctors and the nurses. I think they do a tremendous job under a huge amount of stress. I have patients that work high up in some of these hospitals in admin, and they just, they come in pulling their hair out on a daily basis because they cannot cope with the load that's been given to them, and their staff is being cut, and the people in the offices are being cut. And it's almost like it's a pressure test on them, And so, and as I said, who really understands it? Because it's just a huge thing, and everyone will have a different opinion depending which department you're in and who you are and all the rest of it. But the one unifying thing is they don't appear to have enough staff to cover things they need to do. That's my view. And also, the other thing is they have to bring in people who then have to be paid privately, i.e. through the employer type. They don't come in under the NHS employment, they come in privately, and then that is then a big problem, so they have to pay them far more. And she said they've got nurses working on private contracts earning more than the docs, and that's not right, is it? So, so there's, I think it's just everyone knows, it's mismanaged. But the difference is what I've learned from you guys, it appears to be deliberately mismanaged in order to collapse it. That may well be something we can discuss a bit further.
Absolutely. And certainly at AV5, this book came up. You mentioned this book, The Drugs Don't Work. And this is subtitled A Global Threat by Professor Dame Sally C. Davis. Now you might say, Professor Dame Sally C. Davis, should I know that name? Well, let's put it this way, you really, really should, and we will explain why after this break. If you want to text us or email us, here are the details.
Use your mobile phone to keep in touch with Peterborough FM. Why not text us on 60777? That's 60777. Begin your message with 337PC. That's 337PC. PC for Peterborough Community. A space, then your comment. Standard network text charges apply. Alternatively, send us an email via studio@peterborough.fm. That's studio@peterborough.fm. One station, many communities. And we're waiting to hear from you. Serving up the beats and making it hot.
Friday, 10 o'clock a.m. Playing the music you love. On your computer. On your smartphone. Get ready for the bounce.
The best DJ around. Tom Easley.
Observation, official dumb media, worldwide analysis, technology, corruption, health. This is the definition of DoomWatch.
And it is already 23 minutes after 6 p.m. Where does the time go with this show? I have absolutely no idea. Hiding under desks, it would appear, is probably one of the little diversions. And speaking of little diversions, but not that little actually, goodness me, no, here is Lexi.
I don't know if that's a compliment.
Of course it's a compliment, yes.
Hello everybody. Yes, I've got some comments here, and GoBanks kicks us off and says, end the Fed, chemtrails, Monsanto and Agenda 21. We won't need a health service to sell us fluoride-based pills.
Ooh.
Yes. D. Oberman, buy from as many small privately owned businesses as you can. Lordy says, I wish Graham was my doctor.
Oh, I'm sure we can come to some arrangement on that, yes.
And they think you did a very good presentation at AV5.
Oh, very kind. Thank you very much. That's very kind.
GoBanks says, eat your way fit. Yes.
We shall certainly talk about that as well. Yep.
Ken50 says, if I have a cold, I have a couple of tots of rum. How did the bottle of vodka go, darling? Could you remember last time? He said he was going to take the bottle of vodka when there was that meltdown.
That's it. Yeah.
Because he's Scottish and he doesn't need anything else.
Apart from whiskey, if you're Scottish. We were talking about this before. Vodka from Scotland. No. Fine single malt. And I should say, Tom got me fine single malt for the other week. And I actually got round to trying it last night. And it is the most smooth, most peaty. It is like, anybody who knows their whiskey, it's like Highland Park to the nth degree. It's just magnifique. But there we go. I'm cutting back, honestly, really. Anyway.
D. Oberman says, I'm scared of seeing my doctor. I go there with one complaint and I come out with 3 things wrong with me.
Buy one, get two free.
Yes, you're getting a good deal, darling. Paul R. There's no such thing as side effects. They are just the effects of medication, good and bad. Int Bell says doctors are trained in illness and disease rather than health and wellness.
Ooh, we'll get the view on that in a moment.
Paul R. The two most dangerous places one can be in is a war or hospital. And Trish, the story of the vaccine researcher being charged is on the site Healthy Holistic Living.
Ah, there you go.
Well, so straight away, I mean, we've all heard of this thing, Mrs. A, or I'm sorry, MRSA, and that's somebody else's joke. I do apologise for it, but I don't think anyone ever watched the show that I nicked it from, so that's fine. Hospitals being as dangerous as anywhere else in terms of just seeming to be this breeding ground for disease.
I mean, anyone who's in healthcare who has half a brain cell switched on avoids hospitals literally like the plague. This is you can see interviews with leading consultants and all the rest of it. Mainly coming out of the States, are a little bit more vocal than over here. We tend to be a little bit more reserved. And there's no question of it. You don't. I have medical colleagues who will divert their loved ones away from that and try and keep them at home and all the rest of it. And because if you go in there as an old person, in particular, with your immune system's not that great, you end up with pneumonia, or you end up with some horrible bug that they're going to struggle to try and get rid of. And MRSA is probably one of the least ones of those things now. We've eclipsed that, and there's even worse things coming out. And the fact is that what people need to get their head around is that these bugs breed fast. And what's really interesting is what these bugs never used to cross species. They would never talk to each other. They would kind of look after themselves and make sure they were safe and could grow, and then they would select for their strongest one each time they were killed off by a bug, and then come back and grow again. But what they're doing now is they're talking to each other. And they're now, so some other bug that wasn't necessarily related to them, they're now passing the resistance genes onto them, and they do it via things called plasmids and other sort of clever stuff. And so we're at war. Literally, they've declared war on us. They've said they've had enough of us. And now they're fighting back. And they can turn over in 20 minutes a whole new generation with new information. And what they can also do is what people may not realise is they can predict. They're very clever. They're using our drugs to predict what they think we're going to do next. It's almost as if they've got an intuition with this stuff. And so they start producing a resistance to the next 3 or 4 things we might develop. And we're just nowhere near. These things have been there before us. So you can't fight this. You have to have a different approach. And until they get their head around having a different approach, we aren't going to be able to deal with this. And the different approach comes out of the natural medical community, if you like. Because these guys have been using stuff to deal with that for centuries, and that's, we can develop that if you want to chat about that. But the answer is not in these synthetic things. It just doesn't work.
I mean, expanding on that, and this gets us back to the drugs don't work. And I mean, Professor Dame Sally C. Davies, I'm just reading off the back of this. This is the Chief Medical Officer for England. And what she says, the byline here is, resistance to our current range of antibiotics is the new inconvenient truth. If we don't act now, we risk the health of our parents, our children, and our grandchildren. I mean, that sentence, that's not messing around there.
No, and the conference, when I gave my talk, I told the story of being out with the kids and the family in Bishop Stortford, and it was a rainy day, and then we all sort of ran into the bookshop, and they all went off to their children's section, and I sort of hung around the health section as I do, and I saw this book, and I've been aware of this problem for many, many years, not because I'm particularly clever or anything, I just have for about 20 years. And no, you couldn't even raise an eyebrow on this, no one wanted to know about it. And then suddenly I saw this book and I couldn't believe it. And then when I saw who wrote it, literally my jaw went on the floor. My mind started to boggle, thinking, well, hold on a second. And then when you read it, and you actually get into the content of what she says, it is terrifying. But it is terrifying because she's not just some bloke from down the road. She's the chief medical officer, and what she's saying in there, bearing in mind she has to be sanctioned, she's a public figure of standing, so she can't just make this stuff up. And effectively, the story that she's telling is really her predicting possibly what is going to happen. And I'm not sure if you might read a few of those things as we go along, but it's very unsettling, and it's even more unsettling when the solutions to that problem they don't have. However, within the natural medical community, the alternative, whatever you want to call it, was actually a larger community. There are some strong solutions, but meanwhile they're eradicating them and pulling the rug from under their feet. Because they're regulating them to death, to the point where they can't even prescribe or work with a vitamin C, for God's sake. And so therefore, you have to wonder, why is this happening? Why, if there's this horrible, dangerous thing coming out? And I'll tell you here and now, it's not 40 years away. It's not 20 years away. We don't even think it's 10 years away. People who I respect are telling us it's 7 years away that you're
7 years
that you're going to go to your GP with an infection. And he's going to say, "I don't have anything to do. I can't treat it." And that is terrifying. Now, I don't understand why they're not getting off their backside and really starting to move on this. And I think it's going to take public opinion maybe to change a few things. Because I speak to GPs, and half of them still haven't got a clue. I've got GPs and dentists as patients, and I say to them, and they go, "Oh, well, you know," and they're just on a completely different planet.
It's certainly one of these situations where the possibilities are out there for how to solve the problems, and yet it appears to be that, again, what's getting in the way is financial interests of particular lobby groups, pharmaceuticals, who effectively are, as far as they're concerned, this is business. This is business. This is what it's about. This is, we've got to look after our shareholders, not necessarily got to look after the end user. And I mean, that is the underlying message that whenever you see people who could really influence the agenda who are coming out with. And I mean, certainly we've mentioned the NHS there, and one of the problems with the NHS is lack of funding. And then you just consider how much of that money is going in pills and potions to the pharmaceutical industries.
I mean, it's huge. I mean, the money in pharmaceuticals is huge anyway. The development of drugs is a lot of money. I mean, many years ago, when I was sitting in a lecture at King's College, and it was they were talking about drug development, and I studied pharmacology as part of my degree, or one of my degrees. And then it was $1 billion to get a drug from an idea to market, and so. So there's huge money involved here. And then it was quoted to me that on a daily basis in America, and like I said, they're a bit more forthcoming with their figures than they are over here, the lobbyists go in with like $5 million in their pocket, and turn around to one of the congressmen or whoever it is there, and says, "Oh, you've got a project going on. I've got some money in my pocket. Oh, by the way, we've got XYZ that needs looking at." And there are many books on this. People, whistleblowers, people have come out of that industry. But I mean, imagine if you're a politician and you want to build a road or this or whatever the hell, I don't know how it works, and someone's just got $5 million to put into your pet project. I mean, you're going to look pretty positively on what's going to be put in front of you. And the whole area of research and drug research, I mean, it's pretty well known now, as I alluded to before, that most of it coming out, and they know themselves, is incredibly biased and not really reliable. And you're not even getting scientists write the abstracts anymore. They're all kind of summary. They're written by kind of professional writers. So, I mean, medicine really, I mean, what's got to happen is medical physicians have got to get their independence back. They've got to get up and get some self-respect back. Because at the moment, they're just, I mean, they tell me themselves, they're run by protocols, by NICE, the big organisation.
Clinical excellence, they reckon, yes. Okay.
Which really is just, I've been told, it's really just a commissioning body. It just tries to find the cheapest thing here and there. And many doctors I know who've been there before all this stuff came in, they've retired to get out of the way. They've had enough because they can't practice as they want to practice. We may have differences of opinion on stuff, but in terms of how they practice, But in general, the average doc is not bad if it's allowed to work and within the right context and give him the right information, the right science. They're not stupid, these guys, you know.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they're not. They're corralled within that big pharmaceutical circus and ring, and they're not allowed out of it. It's as simple as that.
It's all right. If you see any flashing on the screen, I think it's thunder and lightning. Very, very frightening. What are you doing? What are you doing? Oh, I see. We've got a Duff fluorescent. Here was me thinking we were doing the opening credits to Flash Gordon from 1980, and Ming the Merciless is hitting us with the heavy hail and the hot rain. And no, we just have a buggered fluorescent lamp. But there we go.
You say basket, darling.
Basket, darling. Yes,
For want of a better expression, yes.
Yeah. I am yes, Ofcom friendly in the language department at the moment. So anyway, with the weather being what it has today, which is some sun, some thunder, some rain, whatever, this from Natural News, 4 major screw-ups with your sun exposure and how to correct them. I'm not going to read all of them at one blast. We'll get Graham to interject on each topic, but here we go. The sun is a major healing force and is responsible for sustaining life on this planet. However, in recent years, it is more recognised for its damaging effects than how it can positively affect somebody's health. This is due to an improper relationship with the sun. However, with some slight adjustments, that healing power can be recaptured. Now, the first topic here is acclimation and exposure. There's a tendency to overdo it when exposing the body to the sun's rays, and the reason is often a skin-damaging sunburn. When acclimating to the sun, start in the spring and create a protective tan with phased-in exposure. Melanin, the tan skin pigment that is produced in the spring, prevents sunburn in the summer. It's a biological mechanism for photoprotection designed exclusively to maintain humans' healthy relationship with the sun. Melanin in the skin transforms 99.9% of absorbed UV radiation into heat that is easily dissipated, which effectively avoids a radiation damage that contributes to cell damage. The best time of day to tan is early morning to solar noon. Expose at least your arms and legs and do it without sunblock for at least 15 to 45 minutes. Use the heat and colour of the skin as a guide to get out and cover up. So, Graham, straight away, it's a different thing and a different approach than most people are told. Certainly, the last time I went to America and we're out, sort of, you know, in the tourist-style shorts and T-shirts, it was literally plaster yourself with factor 180 or whatever, as high as you could get. You might as well have gone in a suit of armour for all that. So I mean, is that the best advice?
I mean, some things I agree with there. Some things I not take issue with, but maybe a different approach with. There is no doubt, in my opinion, and studies were done on this. Certainly one study was done on this, and it was done for some kind of council to do with protection and health and all the rest of it. And the researcher delivered the wrong result. He delivered the results saying, actually, you do need to go out into the sun and not to slap yourself over all the stuff, at least for 15 to 20 minutes a day. Now, the issue is, you could be in blazing sunshine and you won't be getting any vitamin D because it depends where you are, which equator you're on, what angle you are to the sun, and all the rest of it. The actual best time to do it, if you do it in the morning and late, there's no vitamin D in it, it's filtered out. So it needs to be around noon, near noon, and one of the ways you can judge it is you look at your shadow. If you're taller than your shadow, you're probably getting some vitamin D. If you're not as tall as your shadow, you're probably not getting any vitamin D. And that's to do with the angle of the sun to where you are situated. But I mean, you get places like in Argentina and Chile, and you think, wow. And for quite a few months of the year, I'm not talking about winter, you won't get any vitamin D because they're at the wrong angle to the sun, even though it's hot. People from Hawaii are massively deficient in vitamin D. You would never believe that. I think someone's off to Hawaii now.
Yeah, I think so. And there goes Villeneuve. Yeah, or somebody. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, we test patients all day long with vitamin D and for vitamin D levels. And I can honestly tell you, out of God knows how many people I've tested, there's only one person ever met the required amount, and he'd literally just got off a plane from New Zealand, and he'd been there for 6 months.
Yeah,
and that's it. Everybody else, I mean, you know, and the amount you need is actually, in terms of supplementation, is far exceeds what you think and what has been told to you, as with all these things. But you need vitamin D. It's a natural. You have to have it. I mean, without that, you're not going to absorb calcium properly, and there's a whole load of other stuff that comes off that was quite complex biochemistry. But you do need it, and it's actually not a vitamin. I don't even know that. It's a hormone.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's been labelled or misnamed, as it were. And bugs use it. They switch off little receptors in the body so that we can't get good access to it, and when they want to infect us. So we use it in all sorts of things. But we certainly use it in protocols at quite high amounts therapeutically to deal with infection as well. Which I think I'm going to be doing lots of in 7 years' time.
Oh boy, I just looked at the clock. It is now 19 minutes to 7 p.m. That means time for another station break. And we'll be back to talk more about the sun and you. Hopefully we haven't seen the last of the summer in the UK, or elsewise it's going to make this particular issue a little redundant at this point. But misuse of sunscreen. That's what we'll be talking about next. Here's how to contact us by email and by text.
Use your mobile phone to keep in touch with Peterborough FM. Why not text us on 60777? That's 60777. Begin your message with 337PC. That's 337PC. PC for Peterborough Community. A space, then your comment. Standard network text charges apply. Alternatively, send us an email via studio@peterborough.fm. That's studio@peterborough.fm. One station, many communities. And we're waiting to hear from you.
How did you stop taking drugs?
I found a group of people who had been where I had been, who understood where I was coming from, and I'd never found any people who'd understood me before. Because they'd actually used drugs themselves and had got clean themselves. They weren't giving me theories, they were actually telling me solid facts of what worked for them.
How much is your drug use costing you? Call Narcotics Anonymous on 0300 999 1212 or find us at ukna.org.
Reporting today for a future tomorrow. The watchdog you can trust. This is DoomWatch.
And it is about 17 minutes to 7 p.m. Central Peterborough, United Kingdom. Alex G here with you. Your appointment with Theo every Friday between 6 and 8 p.m. So, what have we been saying on the texts? Well, Uncle Tom will revolve the camera to Lexi and we shall find out.
Wasn't ready. First of all, Trish says, I had MRSA coming out of hospital 3 years ago. I healed it up in days with colloidal silver.
Oh, yes, colloidal silver. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Paul R. We'll face an antibiotic demise soon, so people had better learn about herbal antibiotics. Yes, there are such things. Lordy says, GM germs, ?
Oh, gosh, where are we going with that one? Yeah.
Intbell, the bottom line is you can't make a profit out of healthy people.
No, that is true. That is true.
T. Oberman, they're talking about ATVOD and what it can stand for. Actually testing various obedience drugs.
Yes, oh, yeah.
And Intbell, alternative television and video only, denied.
Oh, yes, very nice, very nice.
Ken, it must be time to take my first medication of the night. Beer, wine, rum, not vodka, Lex, but I will drink it for you, Okay. He's not Scottish, I got it wrong.
He's marvellous. He mentions no brand name, so no one's ever going to send him anything. So.
No, they won't. Paul R. says intravenous vitamin C has been shown to kill cancer cells many times. Vitamin C is a hormone. Baking soda also kills cancer cells, known by hold on, this is a long word.
Go on.
Ayurveda for thousands of years. Ayurveda?
Ayurvedic medicine, yeah.
Right, thank you.
Ayurvedic medicine.
D. Oberman. They could tell you hundreds of ways to beat cancer, but it's too cheap. We got a text.
Yay!
And this text says, first, our freedom of speech, then psychiatric sectioning, mental healing, brainwashing, no success. You will never be seen again. Just like in the USSR, Black Hole B.
Whoa.
And finally, D. Oberman, on the sunscreen, she says, use coconut oil. I didn't have sunburn this year. I usually turn into looking like a cooked lobster when sitting in the shade.
But there's been a lot of talk about coconut oil.
There has.
So,
I like coconut oil.
I mean, Graham, is that good? Is coconut oil?
Well, I mean, you know, there's I mean, you can use this zinc-based products, kind of the stuff you stick on the baby, really. You know, the nappy, you know, the nappy.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I mean, the best thing to do really is to work out what your time is. If you want to know how, I would say to a patient, work out what the time is for your skin to go pink. Well, and half that, and that's your exposure time to sun. And you do that, you need at least a quarter of your body exposed for however long that is. Because the thing is, everybody's different. You've got different degrees of sensitivity to it. Yeah. And also, you're in different places, in different countries, at different angles to the sun. So there isn't really a one-size-fits-all. So whatever the time is, it takes you to go pink. Half of that, and that should be that's it. And after that, you want to cover up. With babies, the advice you don't, because they're really sensitive, is don't expose them yet. Let them get a bit older first. So there's a couple of things, which is, you know, if your shadow is longer than you, you're probably not getting any vitamin D.
Right.
And don't let yourself get burned, because that's an indication that, you know, it's gone too far and caused some damage.
So if I'm right, when the sun is directly overhead,
pretty much midday-ish, then that would be normally the time people will keep out of the sun. But for a short period of time, and you don't want to be slapping loads and loads of stuff on. You want to cover yourself up and go into the shade. That's the way you deal with it. But of course, if you're on holiday, the last thing you want to do is cover yourself up and go in the shade. You want to walk around and enjoy yourself.
Sure.
But I mean, there, you know, you could argue this, that whatever you put on your skin gets in your system. A pointing fact is something like when you shower, people don't realise that the chlorine in the water. You know, for every 30 minutes you're on a shower, you're drinking the equivalent of about 8 glasses of that stuff.
Chlorine.
That's exactly, and God knows what else is in there. That's why you should have filters on your shower. You can get them from Amazon for like 20 quid or something. They're not that expensive. Yeah. And the same thing, if you're sticking a whole load of stuff on you, it's got God knows what in it, parabens and chemicals and all sorts of horrible stuff. That will get into your system. And there are people that suggest that that's what's causing all the problems with the cancer and all the rest of it. And that's been, I'm sure people are aware of that. But the best advice is, how long to go pink? Half that's your exposure, and then you're done. Cover yourself up if you really want to protect yourself against some of the horrible things that might happen.
Let's get your angle on this. This is the misuse of sunscreen from naturalnews.com, and they say not only do synthetic sunscreens effectively block the healing benefits of the sun, they also become absorbed and baked into the skin, creating a whole host of potential health problems. Synthetic sunscreen creates a false sense of security by disabling the skin's early detection system, the sunburn, that gives fair warning of imminent danger. This results in overexposure to UV radiation, which effectively ruins the healing benefits and creates other health problems. Sunscreens block UVB rays, which are the rays required for proper vitamin D production. The interaction of the sun's rays with skin activates the production of vitamin D, which scientists are just beginning to discover how much the body sorely needs. Consider only non-toxic sunscreens or botanical oils when sun exposure becomes too long and skin protection is necessary. So that's about where we're about there with them.
I think I wouldn't go to burn, but we'd use that as a marker. As soon as you go to pink, you half that. Yeah. And of course, the big problem isn't even a small factor, not a huge factor, will reduce your ability to produce vitamin D by about 95%. And the problem is if you're not getting vitamin D, you're not being protected against all the big problems, especially in females, ovarian cancer and stuff like this. Vitamin D is extremely important in that area. And as I said, we use it to treat infection and all sorts of other things. So you need it. And if you haven't got enough of it, you're just not going to be healthy. It's as simple as that. You just won't be healthy. And all these things to go together. There's no one magic pill. No. It has to be an across the board. Eating well, sleeping well, and getting a good broad section of minerals and vitamins. I mean, if you want the best advice, and probably at levels above what you're actually being told. But I don't want to get into. I don't want to tell everyone to go and take as much as they can. I'm certainly not saying that. And you need to work with someone who's qualified and knows where it works with this sort of stuff.
I mean, certainly regarding vitamin D, and I didn't realise this, you can actually have too much of it.
I mean, you can have too much of anything. I mean, you can have too much water. That's called drowning. I mean, you can. You can eat too much cabbage. I mean, that's what you're into. I don't know. But I mean, you can get sick from having too much. But I mean, really and truthfully, there's the limits you've been told are way under. I mean, they're giving 1,000 IU to infants now. I mean, some of the doctors are switching on to that now. Children about 1,000 IU per 25 pounds of weight. Average adult should be on at least 4,000 or 5,000 IU a day. Unless you've got some sort of weird parathyroid tumour or something which your health professional should know about, which may muck it up and means you don't want to be taking that sort of. You need about 4,000 or 5,000 IU per day, especially Asian people with dark skin. Especially people with dark skin who cover themselves up, which is obviously a lot of the Muslim community. I mean, my God, they're just not getting anywhere near what they need to be getting. I mean, these people come from very, very hot countries, where they're dosed at much higher than what they're getting now here. So everyone, anyone who comes in, we immediately start supplementing with that as a basic program.
Sure. Other things mentioned there, vitamin C again is another one. Now, I mean, in terms of vitamin C, I mean, to quote Depeche Mode, you just can't get enough.
I think there's different ways you can. Vitamin C is very powerful. It's a big threat to big pharma, a huge threat. If you allowed the standard NHS doctor and GP doctor to be trained properly in its use, I mean, you could pretty much kick a significant percentage of drugs out of the hospitals overnight. I mean, to the point where some doctors think as soon as you come in with something they're suspicious of, they don't know what it is, they should put you on a drip of it. It's huge. I don't know one disease, one infection or one toxin on the planet that will not stamp out.
Right.
I mean, you could be bitten by the most lethal snake, and if you stick enough of that stuff in you, it will kill it dead. I've used it against so many things. I mean, even recently in the last week or two, we've dealt with horrible viral infections on the chest of kids with extremely high respiratory rates. Respiratory rates you would normally hospitalise a child over, and literally within an hour to 3 hours of putting this stuff in at therapeutic doses, bang, respiratory rate returns to normal, child feels like happy and sleeps through the night. We've dealt with things like whooping cough and all sorts of weird stuff that really medicine doesn't have an answer for. We've stopped it dead with good homeopath and vitamin C. We've literally stopped it dead, and that's unheard of. And I'm not the only person doing that, and I'm certainly not making any great claims or anything. But that's my personal experience, and there's a huge amount of literature on vitamin C to support it. It's been going nearly 100 years.
I remember when we were doing On the Edge, I had a pair of dentists who were sort of frowned upon by the mainstream, but they were using intravenous vitamin C when extracting mercury fillings as a detox.
Absolutely.
As they were doing it, and it was sort of like, whoa, is it that easy? I mean, are there different types of vitamin C, and if so, what's good, what's bad?
Well, the problem at the moment is with all things, you're trying to get supply. Really and truthfully, you're not going to get hold of a non-GMO vitamin C at the moment. I think you'd be very lucky to. I mean, most of it's made in China. It's a derivative. They make it from various things. If you are, then let me know, because I'd like to know. A lot of them claim it's not, but when you start speaking to the suppliers sort of behind closed doors, they sort of say, well, it's getting very difficult to get it. I think it's quite expensive, and lots of investment has to go in to make up vitamin C. So for someone to come and do an organic version of it, it would require a lot of startup capital, and I don't think they've got that. I mean, pretty much any vitamin C, it's called ascorbic acid, will do the job. Some people need it to have it buffered, which means there's something else put with it to stop it upsetting your tummy. It's the easiest thing to do. It's the easiest thing to use. And the problem I think is going to be is when infection starts striking in about 7 to 10 years or whatever, and we're all looking around, I think it's going to run out, because you want to get yourself lots of pots of it and know how to use it. And on the website, which we put up for the AV5 thing, we haven't actually done anything on that yet. Literally just capturing people's emails. We'll put something up on there showing you a quick way to use it, and that was drugthebug.com.
Yes, drugthebug.com. So basically sign up for that, and when the information becomes available, then you'll be getting that shipped to your email inbox. It's a very sensible idea. Again, colloidal silver keeps coming up. Oh, I was going to say on vitamin C, it's a little and often because it leaves your system very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, there's different, what we call half-life. If anyone's ever done any kind of science, half-life is, well, the time it takes for half of it to be gone out of the system. Yep. If you're using therapeutic doses, half-life is about 30 minutes. So within a couple of hours, you've got hardly any left. Right. So you will dose it reasonably frequently. If someone's maybe every 15 minutes, every half an hour, depending. And when you do that, you saturate the body with this stuff. And bugs just cannot live in it. Bacteria, viruses, toxins, they cannot live in this environment. And they go away, and people miraculously get well. And it's a wonderful thing. It's a very encouraging thing when you see it. It's so simple to do. And there's a few types of people that you can't do it with, and they've got horrible things called G6, glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency problem. You can't really use it with that. And people have got iron storage disorders, too much iron. You probably don't want to use it for that unless it really is life-threatening and you've got nothing else. And then you have to carefully watch and manage the patient. But pretty much everybody. And there's other areas it goes into with cancer as well. If you want to discuss that, I've no problem. We can talk about that as well.
Absolutely. Definitely one per hour too. I'm just noticed we've got about 3 minutes or so before we have to take the break. Colloidal silver, mentioned from our shout box there. Very much seen as something which frowned upon by the mainstream, but is very much talked about in the alternative community.
Well, prior to, all this stuff came out of what was traditionally used. In America, prior to antibiotics, thousands and thousands of prescriptions were given for colloidal silver. Used correctly, it's extremely powerful. All these things, and really all the docs now are going to have to be trained in how to use this stuff again. Because if they're not, they're going to look a bit silly when people start coming with infections and they haven't got anything. And it's very easy. You can actually make it yourself. There's quite advanced versions of this stuff that clinicians use, functional medicine doctors use, which comes out of the States. And I'm getting something in my ear hole. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, it's all right. Suddenly my wife has appeared unexpectedly. So I'm expecting Michael Aspel with the big red book at any moment.
I was looking forward to that,
That's right. You thought you were coming here just for a radio show, but no. Anyway, yes, a couple of minutes left, so we'll just cover another. Certainly there's talk of GM germs now, and people are saying, well, if they've modified the crops, they can modify the diseases then. So, is this going to contribute to what's going to happen in 7 years?
Oh, absolutely. And the problem is, and it's a huge problem, is when I worked in the labs at King College, the Randall Institute, which is an incredibly well-respected institute, under the directorship then of one of the people that discovered DNA. So we had top-notch people teach us. Even then, no one really wants you. You have to, when you modify things with genetics, when you modify genetics and do all this kind of clever higgery-pokery stuff, you have to use vectors. You have to use things to get it into the body. And these things are not that controllable. No one really knows. You can't fully guarantee that these things, like viruses they use, they kind of like disarm them, as it were. You can't fully know that these things aren't going to switch themselves on again and cause lots of problems. And it has happened. It has happened. It's not fiction. They've done this. They've done experiments. Within 2 years, they've had a batch of people develop, I think it was leukemia, out of some tests they were doing in France. That these things they put into them suddenly got activated again. So there's all, and what makes me astonished is how these so-called scientists, and then, well, don't worry about it, we'll just stick it in everything, put it in the food. And they don't even understand the genome yet. There's huge areas of it, vast areas of it, they haven't got a clue about. So it seems to be a little bit cavalier to me.
Crazy
to be
stuff.
Conservative and diplomatic in how I put these things.
Indeed, yes. We're really telling it how it is. With the time at 1 minute to 7 p.m, it's time for a station break at the top of the hour. We'll be back in hour 2 to speak to Dr. Graham a little bit more about all sorts of aspects. And of course, the big thing will be what really is happening with DNA. Stick with us. It's a biggie.
Use your mobile phone to keep in touch with Peterborough FM. Why not text us on 60777? That's 60777. Begin your message with 337PC. That's 337PC. PC for Peterborough Community. A space, then your comment. Standard network text charges apply. Alternatively, send us an email via studio@peterborough.fm. That's studio@peterborough.fm. One station, many communities. And we're waiting to hear from you.
I think it's all over. It is.
The world's greatest sporting tournament is finally upon us. Join Matt and Danny for the World Cup 2014, following all the teams and all the players, from Messi and Argentina to Espinoza and the Honduras. Looking at the Three Lions journey, from the group stages to the inevitable penalty shootout elimination. The World Cup 2014, every Monday and Tuesday at 6 p.m. on Peterborough FM.
On your phone, in your home, in your car, and even on your laptop. Tune in to 87.7 FM and online at www.peterborough.fm. Peterborough FM, the station that listens to you.
'You're listening and potentially viewing Peterborough.fm and ukcolumn.org/live. Welcome to hour 2 of tonight's edition of DoomWatch. Minutes past 7 p.m. Central Peterborough in the United Kingdom, broadcasting locally and worldwide. My name is Alex G, and thank you for joining us. Your appointment with DoomWatch, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. every Friday. And what was I going to say? Oh, yes. I didn't do this last week, I don't think. Tom says I did. I can't remember. But we had a huge download again, a double number of people downloading hour 2 as to those who had downloaded hour 1. And so I will make the announcement again. If you are listening to the podcast on Peterborough.fm and you go hour 2, but I haven't heard hour 1 yet, you have to scroll down one more because we have the most recent podcast at the top. So you need to go down another one in the list. So, all of that and more, and people making outrageous comments about cakes at AV5, which we are not going to give any more than a short shrift to, but giving a lot more time, as they deserve, of the comments from our frenzied masses. And here is Lexi to tell you more.
All of these people deserve lots of time with their comments.
Indeed, apart from people talking about cakes, but there we go.
Well, Trish says, I've been taking vitamin D3 since early last winter. Last Sunday, when everyone I knew burnt badly, I barely turned any colour. Although I was out in the sun from 1 till 6. Result.
Very nice.
Cade Jones, I tried measuring my shadow, but every time I bent down to measure it, it shrank.
Okay. There's always one, isn't there?
Good. D. Oberman, this coconut oil makes my skin look perfectly radiant. I made a body scrub yesterday, equal amounts of coconut oil and brown sugar, add some vanilla extract and have a spa evening. Any leftovers can be used as a dessert.
I have a funny feeling that is going to be used in a script by a very, very big advertising commercial type company.
We're going to D. Oberman's for a spa evening, girls. I am not David. Please ask the doctor about hives. I had a major problem a few years ago.
Okay, there we go. one for later. Yes, Karen.
Yeah, I've got loads. Kev, does anyone know if sunbeds give you vitamin D?
Oh.
Do they?
Hang on.
Yes.
So sunbeds, are they okay for you?
I wouldn't use it. Where I come from is Essexville. So, so you're considered a bit weird and odd if you don't use them, really.
Planet of the Oranges.
Well, we call them the Oompa Loompas as well. The only way Essex is filmed near where I work, and the whole thing. So, so I'll admit that. I'll get it out there. Yeah. So, it does. If you got, it does. They do. But obviously, I'm not going to say jump in a sunbed for God's sake.
I always say that the show "The Only Way Is Essex" finally proves that Darwin was wrong.
Oh, there you go. No comment.
Nothing wrong with a bit of Essex glitz.
I have to live near there, so
no.
Oh, all these Towie supporters all around. Oh.
I know, it's so bad, it's good. There are people out here who are like, oh, shut up, Lexi. But secretly going home to watch it on a Sunday and Wednesday.
Can I just say one thing? You get an interview with Joey Essex and then you see if you want to interview any more of them afterwards.
Speaking from experience.
Oh,
Tom.
yes.
Yeah.
I like them. Anyway.
Right. More.
Yes. D. Oberman, please ask Dr. Graham. I'd like a clone of him, by the way. Yeah, none of our...
Oh, an interesting sideline. An interesting sideline we can get into. Yes. Oh, excellent.
About cooking oils. There are some really bad ones that should be used to oil machines only. Yes. Go Banks. It's worth watching Dr. Eric Pollard's videos. Pure science, no theories. But I thought he was on Emmerdale.
I think it's a different Eric Pollard. I hope it's a different Eric. Perhaps he's branching out. I mean, they don't pay much on Emmerdale,
Lordy says, would vitamin C help for MS?
Oh. Okay. Shall we go?
I've got more.
Carry on. Yeah.
Int Bell. I recommend hemp seed oil.
Right, yeah.
D. Oberman, any good supplier of real vitamin C that Dr. Graham can recommend?
Real vitamin C.
Yep.
Right, okay.
Int Bell again. Also recommend colloidal silver for the body, gold for the brain.
Gold?
Yes.
Well, always believe in your soul. Yeah.
For God's sake.
I'm going to be accused of laughing and bringing the tone down, aren't I? I know. Yes, anyway, carry on. Yes.
And Ken says, DoomWatch, more bite than Suarez.
If that's at all possible.
Thank you, Lexi. The camera will rotate back in the direction. Yeah. Oh, dear. Yeah, I thought we were going to get through the show without talking about Luis Suarez. Did you notice last week I actually mentioned him in the intro, and at that stage the only crime he had committed was scoring 2 goals against England, and then look what he comes and does. I don't know, just something in the ether telling me that Luis Suarez would end up being a big villain at the World Cup. There we go. Anyway, so Graham, let's start with the hives thing. What's the treatment for hives? What should people be looking at?
Well, the thing is, it's a bit difficult, really, being over here and not seeing the patient, not seeing what is it really that. What is it? What came before that? I mean, this is hives is the reaction to something else. Yeah, I mean, and also why are you reacting? I mean, so it's difficult. It's a little bit too isolated to say that. I kind of need to know a little bit more about that. But I mean. Most of these things, they go away quite quickly. As long as there's a logical reason for it, I think we'd get involved in sort of asking questions if there wasn't a logical reason for it. Yeah. If suddenly you're just getting it a lot and no one can pinpoint what it is, and then obviously we'd get involved with that. It's a little bit difficult to answer that without any more information. So I'll take a pass on that one because I don't want to give the wrong advice.
No, absolutely. And again, this is the thing. The medicine is specific. What should be taken is specific to the person rather than the condition, and this is the thing that people have actually got to get their head around. That it's not a one size fits all, which is
I mean, we kind of get forced into that a lot because, as you know, Alex, you know a little bit more about this now.
Yes.
We're quite detailed in how we analyse people and all the rest of it, and we try and keep it as simple as possible. And we use some very clever labs, and most of them are based in the States, and they're very, very advanced at what they do. Unlike our GP friends, no disrespect, someone just said, we'll take this, so we do need to have a little bit more information sometimes before we can sort of, But having said that, we do have to have some simple solutions because not everyone's going to come and ring me up or call me or book an appointment to see me. So.
And I mean, this is the thing that's come out recently about GPs, that they've got to treat people like a production line because they've got to see so many within their calendar day.
Yeah, I mean, I get consults from GPs now who want to start sending patients because they're, there's only so many times you can throw medicine at someone and it's not working. And the person then comes in crying their eyes out in pain or something's not, and they've sent them off to the consultant and that hasn't worked. I mean, 99% of the people who see us are quote-unquote medical failures. So we end up getting the worst ones. I mean, it would be nice to be on the other end of it and get the easy ones for a change. My life would be a lot easier.
Get the drive-through ones.
Yeah, give me a drive-through one.
Yeah.
I want to do the 5-minute drive-through thing. Yeah.
I can see like fast food eateries for some reason. I don't know, but there we go. Speaking of which, cooking oils, and this is something which
it's real simple. I mean, there's a whole history to cholesterol and vegetable oil and all that, and you guys may know that. I'm not going to go into that now because it's quite a long history. But basically, don't have vegetable oil. I mean, no disrespect to people who make vegetable oil; they're all obviously very nice, but I would not advise patients to take vegetable oil. By the time you get it, it's probably off and rancid.
That sounds great.
But it doesn't give off a rancid smell, so you're not going to know that. And it's probably been sitting somewhere for 6 months prior to getting it. Most people I know will not recommend using that because it creates free radicals, it goes in your system, starts to tear up your system, and you're going to get horrible things happen down the line, like strokes and horrible weird things, so you don't want to be taking that. Probably the best thing you can take is pure virgin coconut oil. It looks like lard. It's stable at room temperatures, so that's probably one of the best things. Olive oil is kind of all right, but when you heat that up, you start to get problems with it. But having said that, you have to live in the real world. Not everyone can go out and buy tons of coconut oil and all the rest of it. So I live in a real world with patients. So I would probably say, look, try and get the coconut oil if you can, but it has to be pure, has to be virgin coconut oil, and use that. And that's far healthier in lots of ways, in loads of ways. Used to be with patients with dementia as well, actually, which is some good results from that.
I've got a pot and it says pure unrefined. Is that the same? Virgin coconut oil?
Okay, there's a bit of a tongue twister. Unrefined. Yeah, I mean, I would like to see the word virgin on it.
Okay.
Not for any other reason.
Not that you want Richard Branson to get a cut or anything.
But he needs to say that, really. And it's probably good. It's probably okay. I mean, the trouble is they do charge a bit for it, but you can get it on Amazon, all these kind of funny places, and you need to take enough of it, and it provides a great energy source for the brain. People with dementia which they now call diabetes type 3, that's what they call it, is whether they're not even aware of that or not.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Well, what causes all these things is poor control of blood sugar. And if you don't control your blood sugar by eating regularly throughout the day, eating protein at every meal, and eating protein between meals, like some peanuts, as our friend Tom over here was doing.
Excellent.
If you're not doing that, then your blood sugar is going to go off. And if it goes off, you'll get insulin spikes, which causes problems in the body, and it also causes damage to the brain.
Carry on.
Damage to the brain. And it causes inflammation in the brain, and it brings on dementia, basically. So you can't wait till you get dementia, although there are treatment options. You need to be dealing with it way decades ahead, because once you've got the first signs of it, unfortunately, probably 70% of that part of the brain has already been significantly damaged. So blood sugar, must balance your blood sugar. So how many people get up in the morning and don't eat breakfast?
Well, this is it.
Am I looking at anyone across the room here who might be doing that? And you won't be hungry. Because what happens is, as your blood sugar drops, your body will produce adrenaline to try and release some sugar. You might even feel a bit nausy and shaky, and you won't be hungry. But you need to make sure you've got that protein in the morning. And that's not, a bowl of porridge. You have to have some meat, fish, eggs, or something in the morning.
And I mean, in particular, you mentioned eggs there, and I mean that's something that you're really keen on in terms of
eggs are incredible. I mean, look, unless you've got some mad allergy. And look, and by the way, as I'm speaking now, there's going to be someone that disagrees, because that's just the nature of the beast with this thing. No matter what you say, there's someone who's, oh no, I heard about this. Eggs are probably the most healthy food you could ever eat. And I know. I mean, I know recently a quote story was that this guy was in his nearly 90, and he was having like 25 eggs a day, and his blood work was absolutely perfect. Forget all this nonsense you hear about cholesterol. Just forget it. It is complete and utter bunkum. There is no connection between that.
I'm glad you said bunkum. I must admit.
Not in something else. And then it came out. And look, the studies show it. The people with the highest cholesterol live the longest. That's it.
Which is going to stun a lot of people when you say
the highest cholesterol live the longest. And if you've got 100 people over here, another 100 people over there, all with the same cholesterol level, and you gave this lot all the statins, that lot not, the ones with the statins, more people would drop down dead or get cancer.
So here we have a push for more people to have statins, and this is just going to be counterproductive then.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, look, you can look at the data. I mean, cancer goes up, stroke goes up, all these horrible things go up, and you can almost parallel the introduction of statins, with a little bit of lag to dementia, because your brain is 60 to 70% fat, it's cholesterol.
Can I interject? Yeah. Sorry, Lily Cat Baby has said, could he expand on the dementia, please?
Okay, well...
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so, I mean, there's some frightening statistics on this. I mean, also, we're seeing it more in younger patients. You're getting it in 30-year-olds now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just outrageous. I mean, the worst thing that was ever done was to put people on statins. And don't get me wrong, there are some people with something like familial hypercholesterolemia, which may require medication.
Yeah.
But the levels they're doing these things at now are just, they seem to arbitrarily pluck them out of the air. And most guys I know in the field that I work, they regard statins as a red flag drug to get people off as soon as possible.
Wow.
I've had patients. You'll get patient die on it. I mean, they can kill you dead. I mean, there's papers on it. Statin-induced cardiomyopathy. They're actually writing papers on it. It's been around for donkey's years. And because what they do is, as people should know, I mean, this is not new news, I'm sure, is it robs the body of ubiquinol, or the famous CoQ10, which is involved in something called oxidative phosphorylation, which produces energy in your cells. So what you do is you strip the ability of your heart to get the energy it needs, and it starts to falter. So it introduces a cardiomyopathy, amongst all the other things. So I would, if there was a GP or medical person listening to this, I would urge them to look at the research and just take a long look at this and say to themselves, well, hold on a minute. I mean, I have patients who are in horrible pain. You take them off statins, bang, the pain's gone. It causes a lot of musculoskeletal pain. And on. And this is certainly not new. I'm sure people, if they Google on the web, they'll find this information.
Yeah. There's a great DVD called Statin Nation. I got that sent to my GP, who was demanding of my nurse as to why I was not on statins. And I provided that DVD to them, and I've heard nothing since.
Well, I mean, absolutely. The very least, if you're not going to come off, the very least you need to be doing is taking CoQ10. Now, we can argue about what's the best one. You need to be in the range of about 150 mgs to 200, 250, maybe a bit higher a day. And so, if I were someone on them, which I'm not, never will be, thank God, you need to be, taking that and that's obvious. There's literature on that. This isn't just come down from the stars. But once again, does it affect the GP on the ground? No, he's still plodding along, giving his statins out.
Which sort of leads to one of the questions there about where can you get the real McCoy stuff? I mean, vitamin C was the example.
Well,
where do you get the real McCoy?
Yeah, I mean, there are companies that clinicians like myself use. And there's always, nothing's perfect. No. But there's ones we know that we're getting what we want in there. Because if you go to the high street one, no disrespect to them, they're fantastic, they're giving stuff, but there might be fillers. We're not sure, are we getting exactly what we want? But there's trusted companies. And what I'll do is they need to go to that website, and what I'll do is I will put information on. On there.
Just give the site again.
Drugthebug.com.
Drugthebug.com.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a site with a silly little video on it. I kind of did it because I knew I was speaking at the conference. I thought, well, people may ask. I didn't realise the kind of avalanche I was going to get. I thought someone might be interested, and actually I thought it was going to be a road crash for my talk, because I was in between two very good speakers who were brilliant. And I thought, who's going to want to hear about vitamin C? And I was absolutely stunned. I mean, I was shocked. I couldn't move for people stopping me and asking me questions. So the response was way above what I expected it to happen.
I think it's the case that so many people, once they start down the rabbit hole, something gets them going down the rabbit hole, and eventually they'll go down the side street, which is sort of the whole medicinal side of things, especially if they have a particular condition or they know someone who has a condition who's close to them, and straight away is seeing that, well, the drugs don't work, is the thing.
Do you remember the story that I gave I started to talk about what gets. I'm not somebody who just thinks, oh, I'm going to do this. Things happen to me, and I develop in that direction.
Yeah.
And we do things because we live in the real world, and I have to deal with patients. I can't just make it up in theory. These things have to work. And I told the story. Do you want to tell the story again?
Please.
I got a call. It was on a Sunday, and it was about 11:30 in the evening, and it was unusual people to call at that time. And I picked up the phone, and it was I heard the voice, and I knew who it was. It was my best friend's dad. And he didn't say, hi, how are you, blah, blah, blah. It was a bit odd him calling anyway. He turned around and said, Mike, who's best friend's name, he said, Mike's dying. I said, well, I was a bit stunned. I said, well, what do you mean Mike's dying? I thought, you're having a laugh, you're winding about. He said, no. Anyway, cut a long story short, this 6'4", strapping East End guy, very, very fit, had been literally dying on the floor for 2 weeks in Indonesia. And the hospital was not been able to help him, the medics. And as I said, I don't understand why, because they're very good at what they're doing over there. No different from here, really. They've got good hospitals. Cut a long story short, this guy was running a temperature like you couldn't believe, but he was feeling cold and all the rest of delirious. And I had about 30 minutes to try and come up with something with someone halfway across the world. And I then gave the talk at the AV5 and said, what do you think I do? And everyone put their hand up and said, did you say give him vitamin C? And what I did was, I didn't look for a medical doctor. I looked for a medical doctor that worked in a spa. Because I know they give these things as kind of like a beauty, life-enhancing kind of treatment. Because they can't say treats medical, disease and all the rest of it. And I found one, and I emailed him. I said, urgent, blah, 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 explained. He got straight back to me. Anyway, cut a long story short, they carried my friend in. He's a big old guy, he's a big old lump. They carried him in. They put him on the table, and they put the drip in, and they put vitamin C with another thing called glutathione, which is very, very important for the body and fantastic for helping with infections and other stuff. And they put this in, and literally, and I kid you not, my friend said he went from being an old man dying, and he's not old, he's only a young guy, to within 45 minutes he walked off that table and went outside and had a full English breakfast. I mean, it kicked that disease into touch. And medical doctors in hospital watching patients probably dying. My God, if they could try and use this stuff, I mean, it would certainly turn their world around. And I'm of the opinion, and so as many other people, that many, many people do die unnecessarily. Not suggesting everyone, but when they could be helped with this. This stuff has pulled people out of comas.
Which brings us to the subject of MS. I should just say it is 21 minutes after 7 p.m. We are going to skip this station break so that everybody knows what's going on. Next one, obviously, in about 20 minutes' time. Some people on Peterborough FM who listen to certain shows on this network won't find that unusual at all. We have certain shows who think it's perfectly fine to do a whole hour of music with no talk, not referencing what channel they're on or anything else. Oh, source of milk for Alex. Yes, this is what happens when you let untrained people get on the air. Or are they trained and can't be bothered? I don't know. Slapperisti, I'm playing politics in the middle of DoomWatch. What is going on? Oh dear, tipping people off. They're going to be scouring through the podcast now trying to find which show I'm talking about. Fantastic. I think Lexi's madly scribbling. Are you available for a conversation?
I am indeed, darling.
Oh, absolutely marvellous. So here we go. Here are some comments from the show box.
Oh, okay. So D. Oberman says DoomWatch is great.
Oh, thank you.
It delivers more than it promises. It's fun. The info is great, and it has an eye candy in the shape of Alex G and Tom Mutiny. And now I'm deaf. Thanks for that.
I did lean back. I did lean back away from the microphone.
We got a text.
Ooh.
What about the growing number of people who are diagnosed with vitamin D deficiency? Wouldn't it be connected to chemtrails by any chance?
Ooh.
Also, thousands now have blood pressure problems. Russell says... yes, that was from Russell. No, it wasn't. I don't know who that was from. Russell says, glad to join the video live experience of DoomWatch for the first time. Always
welcome.
Yes.
Welcome, Russell. Hello.
Always a hilarious but informative way to start the weekend. Keep up the terrific work.
Yes, well, thank you for that. There are so many people who don't get DoomWatch, and yet they watch every week or listen every week. Well, actually, it is watching. I should say, and I shall do this to the camera, if Tom would like to turn the camera. There we go. Oh, that was a fast pan. Almost reminded you of an intercommercial break in The Man from U.N.C.L.E., didn't it? Oh, yes. Except I'm not in a tailor shop. But there we go. How many people are getting these references? I don't know. For those of you who are watching as you normally do on ukcolumn.org/live, you will know this is no longer YouTube linked. So if anybody is looking for us on YouTube, they're not going to find us. So isn't that going to be wonderful? All those trolls just swiped dead.
It's so lovely.
Just like that. So out of darkness cometh light, which is also the slogan for Wolverhampton, but it seems absolutely sort of spot on here. But there is actually sort of light in every darkness, and we found it. We found it. The trolls can't get at us anymore. Yay! I'd just like to say thank you to everybody on the UK column Shoutbox for your continued support of the show, and it is obvious that we've got loads and loads of people tuning in this week, because there's so many different names and so many different voices coming through in what is being said there. Hemp seed oil was mentioned the last time there, Graham. I mean, again, in the right circumstances, is that something that should be prescribed?
Well, the thing is I mean, there's, you know, if this were, it sounds insane to say, but if this were a free country, I could espouse to the rooftops on this. Yeah. However, you know, there are certain laws. I mean, if someone has cancer, they have to go and see their oncologist, and no one must be seen to treat cancer unless they're that and all the rest of it. However, the mechanisms that are proposed for use, certainly people, oddly enough, I didn't know you were going to talk about this today, but someone just spoke to me, was it today? It was yesterday. Yeah. Someone they know who's been taking it, and they've cleared themselves of some horrible cancer. Now, do I suggest that work for everyone? Obviously not. But are there mechanisms? Well, yes, people do talk about mechanisms of how this would work. And, you know, without getting too bogged down in all the science of it, but there are receptors on cells that respond to this stuff. And they switch on a certain chemical, if you like, which induces cell death in apoptosis. Oddly enough, a project that I was working on at King's College, and I was actually involved in mapping that gene, involved in that. So, and what happens is that when you take the oil, it turns on these receptors, and programmed cell death then starts to happen. So you kill off the cancer cell. So is there science behind it? My understanding is there is. There's certainly a big history of it, and certainly I hear lots of people who use it. So yeah, I mean, that's not...
I mean, we've got a list again, as usual. If you go and look at show page 31 at DoomWatch.com, you'll see mentions of lots of the stories that we're talking about tonight, and further information that you can look up. But I mean, we've got the headline here: medical cannabis helps heal chronic disease, and there's a bullet-pointed list here. And really, this is the point where we should start actually sort of asking questions of the mainstream community on this. So we're talking cannabis. It can stop HIV from spreading throughout the body. It slows the progression of Alzheimer's. It slows the spread of cancer cells. It's an active pain reliever. It can prevent or help with opiate addiction. It combats depression, anxiety, and ADHD. It can treat epilepsy and Tourette's. It can help with other neurological damage, such as concussions and strokes. It can prevent blindness from glaucoma, and it's connected to lower insulin levels in diabetics.
So let's make it illegal.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm just so fair. I try to see it from the other side's point of view, as to, oh well, yes, we don't want all these stoners sort of, walking out into traffic and killed in RTAs,
Well, I think the thing is that the way it's given is completely different from, sit there smoking a spliff. No, it's done in a completely different way. It's got no relation to that. So I think that argument hopefully is dealt with. I think it's just, unfortunately, you've got this, I don't know if cognitive dissonance would be the right word for this, but you've got this, that it's in the psyche as being something that you shouldn't have. Yeah. Having said that, most people probably have tried it somewhere along the line whilst they were students or whatever. But it's in the psyche as something, and so therefore you've kind of got to get over that. And also the other thing is, the obvious thing is, what you just listed there. I mean, how many pharmaceuticals won't be needed if that comes into the...
Well, I think a profit warning would be issued immediately by most of the companies in question, wouldn't it? I mean, it is incredible. And yet it's sort of just got this demonisation going on all the time about it. crazy stuff. Before I forget, because it's getting near that time where I can see, the clock is ticking and we've got about 25 minutes left. I was asked to mention an event which is happening in Coventry. So if you're in and around the Coventry area, Rugby Road, Coventry, in fact, fair and square, the Cocked Hat. I think that may be the name of the event, but the Cocked Hat is probably the venue. It's Coventry CV32AX. This is happening this Sunday, the 29th of June, 10:30 a.m. it begins. It's all hosted and introduced by a guy called Ballyman. Now, Ballyman, you might remember from a UK column news of late. In fact, it was a few months ago. Bally was interviewed alongside Carl Lentz, and he was an American talking about the use of the Queen's Bench to solve problems. So getting into sort of, real super duper common law stuff. And basically, Bally has been working with Carl for a while, and he invited Carl over to the UK to speak at one of his events. And while he was there, Bally and Carl actually came onto the UK column news, as mentioned, and it turned out to be one of the most popular programs in terms of downloads, etc. So this is a chance to actually get your head around more aspects of common law. That's with Ballyman, Sunday the 29th of June, this Sunday, 10:30 a.m, fair and square, the Cocked Hat, Rugby Road, Coventry. Here's one for your sat-nav, CV32AX. CV32AX. There is a charge on the door. As we know, we don't mention prices on Peterborough FM, so you'll have to find Bally to find out what that is all concerning. But it sounds a reasonable price for a day's worth of entertainment. So, Graham, we said we were going to talk about the whole concept of DNA and where there is a manipulation going on, and people will immediately go, "Oh my Lord, what do you mean our DNA can be manipulated?" So surely that's set at birth. But I mean, there's a lot of background behind this. I mean, if I read what we had on the Alternative View conference website, which we had, it's probably a good kick-off point. The Gnostic texts were discovered in Egypt in 1945. This pre-Christian text devotes over 25% of its content to the archons, considered the rulers of man. It is thought that these other dimensional beings exert control by influencing man's thoughts. Some authors believe they have created bloodlines by manipulating DNA to allow for easier possession and control of the human species. So that begged the question, therefore, how might DNA be involved in our control, and what effect does diet and nutrition play in that?
Yeah, I mean, that's as you said, that's a deep.
In the beginning, the earth cooled and the dinosaurs came, sort of question. Yeah,
that's deep down the rabbit hole. I was listening to. I think it might have been David Icke speaking, actually. It might be. He was talking about this subject. And obviously I've got 2 feet. I've got one foot firmly in lots of science and all the rest of it. And then I have another open-minded foot, for one of them, confusing all my expressions, in the other camp, which is talks about that stuff. So I'm open to listen. And I wondered, and you look back in the literature, and these things are said to be able to create illusions, be able to control control individuals and all the rest of it. And I thought, well, how would those people present today if they were sitting there imagining and had all these illusions going on? They'd probably looked at as having some form of mental illness. And I thought, okay, well, is there kind of any link there? And then the other side, which has been put forward, is that we're run by people who are psychopaths. Literally, they're sociopaths committing crimes. So I said, is there a link there? And then I looked through and with the sort of wider field of what's going on with nutrition, what's going on with all the medicines and the rest of it, and there does appear to be a link. And I've not really spoken about this before, but it does involve something called methylation, which maybe quite a few people are starting to hear about or heard about. Yeah. And in its simplest form, DNA is wound up. It's wound up into sort of packages, if you like. And in order for it to express proteins and its coding, it has to kind of unwind. And then bits of it have to be copied, and then that has to go on via various intermediaries and be turned into a protein, and that then causes something to happen. And it happens a lot all the time. And what you find is with certainly in the 40s, this research was done about the same time when all the knowledge about the archons was found in Egypt. Yeah. About the same time, actually, I think. And people were starting to look at how you can affect mental illness through nutrition, through methylation. Right. And they didn't call it methylation, they didn't quite know what it was. They were giving certain vitamins and minerals at therapeutic dose, and they published the literature. They were curing things like schizophrenia and all sorts of things which you think, my God, how can we cure that? So you had a link to someone who had some kind of expression of mental illness being treated by that. And that was through, what it is the DNA, which was tightly bound and therefore not expressing proteins that they needed through nutrition, was unwound enough to express the proteins they needed, and therefore they could behave in a normal fashion. And then, of course, you've got sociopaths and psychopaths. Well, they did research with these guys as well, and they did the same thing. And they could actually do blood tests on these people, and they were looking at histamine levels, which we now relate to what we call low methylation, hypermethylation. So anyway, cut a long story short, and they were then treating these people, and they were behaving normally, and their violence went down, their crimes went down. It was difficult with them because you couldn't keep them on the program. So you had this kind of connection through this process of manipulating the tightness or how tight it is wound or not, and it's done through food. And I found that, I thought, oh, well, hold on a minute. Then if you were an extra-dimensional creature and you were trying to exert some control, then maybe that manifests through that. And therefore, by treating this in this particular way, you've kind of you've kind of tuned them out, because the DNA literally changes conformation. And at some point, maybe we will give a reasonably big in-depth talk on this. There's a huge amount of research on this, and to me, it's very interesting. But keeping it down just with 2 feet firmly on the ground, it's important. Why? Because it involves something called epigenetics. You're kind of hardwired, but if you have hardwired babies coming into different environments over hundreds and thousands of years, they may not be prepared for the environment. So there has to be a fine-tuning done, and it's done through epigenetics. And it's where you get these methylation points on DNA change the way DNA is so it can respond to your environment through food and all the rest of it. And unfortunately, when you start bringing GMO into the picture and Roundup, I did remember the right word.
Yeah, I was going to say.
You start to see the lunacy of this uncontrolled madness in terms of trying to put fish genes in plant. I mean, for God's sake, human genes into. I mean, the two things that are never meant to meet, and having no real knowledge of what's going to happen and how that's going to affect all of this system. And of course. For me, as someone who's been a scientist and someone who's a physician, that is extremely worrying, and it should be for the lay person as well. It should be extremely worrying. But through good food, good nutrition, you can affect how your DNA expresses itself. And unfortunately, with what's coming down the pipe for us in terms of this non-labelled GMO rubbish, we are going to be massively affected. Now, that's one assault. The other assault is they're actually making synthetic DNA. And I explained to you before, they've actually done it in a lab. This is Frankenstein on acid. And they've actually they've had to create enzymes to work with this. Normal enzymes don't work. But the very worrying thing about this is this: if you put this into the wild, it will deselect against our DNA. It's far stronger. And the scientists...
So, I mean, this is like the invasive species that are coming to the UK. I'm trying to think about... There's I think there's a... which is it? My people from my former profession are going to go, what, you can't remember any of these? And they literally come in, and they're bullies compared to the species we know. I mean, it's very much like our native red squirrel, and the grey squirrel comes in from the US of A, and basically savages them, and the populations collapse. Well, this is potentially what's going to happen.
There's two ways of looking at this. One is just a straight way of saying this is madness. Now, the scientists said, there's no worry about it. It won't do that. It's not going to do that. And you've heard, how many times have you heard that? And then there's the other side of it. Well, if there is some validity to other dimensions, science suggests there is, and if there is some influence, then maybe they've had enough of trying to muck around with us. They're just going to create a whole new DNA structure, and they can just remove us from the frame. I don't know. I mean, that's conjecture. But I found it interesting, and I thought it was worth putting it together and putting it out there. And maybe we can... I spoke recently to Ian Crane, and maybe if he does another talk in London or somewhere, we might catch me. Or if you guys do something, we might hook up and we maybe put this on and put this together as a proper talk.
A DoomWatch event. Oh, DoomWatch going live and direct in your back garden or something like that. Oh, I tell you what, Wembley Arena. Well, if David Icke can do it, I'm sure. There's a lot of people going, you must be joking. Well, who knows? Who knows?
Lots of people want phone-ins. Lots of people are wanting phone-ins.
Oh, they're wanting phone-in. We're going to have to find a guest who only wants to do half an hour. Then we can do a phone-in.
I've got lots of questions here for the doctor.
In which case, it's questions next after this station break, and we'll give you the opportunity to ask some more by telling you how to get in touch by text and by email.
Use your mobile phone to keep in touch with Peterborough FM. Why not text us on 60777? That's 60777. Begin your message with 337PC. That's 337PC. PC for Peterborough Community. A space, then your comment. Standard network text charges apply. Alternatively, send us an email via studio@peterborough.fm. That's studio@peterborough.fm. One station, many communities. And we're waiting to hear from you.
Doc Mason Show, every Thursday, 7 till 9. www.peterborough.fm. Great bands, great guests, great music. Alternative, the alternative.
DoomWatch. Fridays, 6 until 8 p.m. on Peterborough.fm and UK Column Live.
And it is, oh my word, 19 minutes to 8. So that means that our polish off time at 5 to 8 when we play you an obscure piece of music to finish up the hour. Well, it is obscure. It's Atletico Spiz 80. That's what we're playing up to the hour with a song called 5-Year Mission, which I hadn't heard until this thing was re-released because I never got the original vinyl back in the 80s. Well worth listening because that is the sequel to Where's Captain Kirk and Spock's Missing. So those of you who know Spiz, whoa, check it out. Anyway, enough of advertising music. The Parliament show with Paul Smith follows us for all your reggae requirements. For all your question and answer requirements, here is Lexi.
Hello. Yes, lots of questions. You're very, very busy. Lordy says, please, can you ask Dr. Graham about vitamin C and MS?
Yeah, I think, before I just answer that, the other thing is what we talked about, people with mental illness. I'm not suggesting that all mentally ill people are possessed, by the way. We're not saying that at all. But that's obviously just a way in to try and discuss some of the information that we do. So anyway, okay, so just clear that up first. MS, well, no one really fully understands it, but the way we'd look at it is an autoimmune problem. So what you want to do is calm your immune system down, and one of the easiest ways to do that is to remove things that you're allergic to. So if you can find out, you can do it through blood tests, not the standard NHS test. That's really not going to give you a lot of information. There are functional tests you can do for that. I may leave some information with Alex if he wants, if people want to get in contact, and we can try and work something out.
We'll get that on the show page. Show page 31, doomwatch.com.
Yeah, so
check it out on Monday.
So the short answer to that is, I don't really like giving a short answer, but the short answer is to come off gluten, come off dairy, come off gluten. If you don't know what gluten is, go online and Google gluten. Come off those things. You need to ensure that any stealth infections are dealt with in the body. And these are things like mycoplasmas and stuff, which unfortunately end up in the vaccines, and they stick them in you, and you get these horrible infections, which cause lots of autoimmune problems, which generates huge amounts of money for the drug companies. So that's the short answer is sleep properly. You need to regulate your immune system. If you start going to bed late, past 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, your cortisol rises and it starts to cause all havoc with your normal cycle of your immune system. So you need to go to bed early, sleep. The old things, an hour before midnight is worth 2 after, and all these old sayings and all the rest of it. So sleep hygiene, we call it. Eat properly, try and eat a good organic clean diet, get gluten and dairy out. And that's as much as I can kind of say here. Vitamin C is great if you're dosing yourself up to bowel tolerance. Means if you're taking it, you get a loose stool, you're probably taking too much, so you just back off a bit. Spread it throughout the day, at least 3 or 4 doses across the day, and keep yourself roughly just below loose stool mode. and then that will also work in the body to try and deal with infection as well. So that's a pretty good way of
Right, good advice there. Merit, please ask Dr. Graham, how do people wean themselves off of statins if they have been prescribed and they are scared?
Okay, well, the thing is, it's any prescribed medicine work through your GP. But the simple answer is you just stop statins. My understanding is you don't really have to wean off. There are some drugs you have to wean off. That's not one of them. However, the caveat to that is speak to your GP because he's prescribing to you. So go the right route and discuss it with him.
Russell from London has texted in. Please, can you ask the doctor a remedy or cure for an itchy scalp, which I have suffered with for years. I've tried different diets, but nothing alleviates. Please help.
There can be various things for this. The simple answer is it's an essential fatty acid deficiency. However, it may be more than that. And like I said, I'm not great on giving simple answers, but if I'm put in a situation, that's the thing I would say. So there are, if you go onto that site I told you about, we will put up products that are good for certain things. We won't say they cure disease because you can't do that, but will certainly be something on there which will deal with that. So like omega-3 type stuff, but getting the right one, that should help.
Okay, Rick Doran, what is the best way to combat brain fog and lack of motivation?
Well, it depends what's causing it. Adrenal fatigue will cause it, thyroid problem will cause it, lack of oxygen to the brain will cause it, which a lot of people say anemia will cause it, allergies will cause it. What we usually do with the patient is we'll run some basic tests and we'll get to the grips of what's going on with these things. Exercise. A lot of people walk around with not enough oxygen to the brain, and the frontal lobe doesn't work as well as it should, and you start to feel depressed and down. Best thing is you must exercise, and the kind of exercise that's good for that is high intensity exercise. Right. It's burst exercise, get that heart rate up, then rest, and then burst, then rest. However, if you've got any heart condition or you're ill, make sure you speak to your health professional because I'm not there to help you. But that's the best stuff to get the oxygen up to the brain, and obviously then be investigated for any other problems. The main thing is with all this is balanced blood sugar. You have 3 meals a day, you have protein at every meal, and in between you have a protein snack in between, some peanuts or whatever it is, and that keeps your blood sugar. You do that, you solve a lot of stuff. Very simple.
Right, I think that answers Dee Oberman's question. She said, I eat 3 meals, I eat meals 3 times a day, of portions being twice the size of my first meal, and in between I snack on fruit or graze whilst cooking. Is the portion size right?
Okay, well, that's a slightly difficult one without knowing someone's size and all the rest of it. Just eat. Don't go crazy. If you're eating, 10 plates worth of food, obviously that's wrong. You don't really have to double it or triple it or compare to the first one. Just eat most people are brought up eating the basic portion size. The question was snacking, grazing between. Do not graze on fruit. Okay, protein only. Okay, even if you eat fruit, it will cause a spike in your blood sugar. Also, it has to, if it's fructose is not as great for you as everyone makes out. And if you're diabetic, you keep off fruit. My advice to you is don't have fruit, okay? Because it has to be processed through the liver and There's a whole lot of science we could give about that. But really and truthfully, and most other people don't go mad on fruit, and. However, if you're juicing and stuff like that, and that's what you're into, great. I'm not going to tell you not to do that. But if you were one of my patients, we'd limit the fruit.
Okay.
Yeah, because of sugar spikes and all the rest of it.
Lily Cat Baby is saying, I'm loving this man more every minute.
Oh.
Lots of people are agreeing, and lots of people are saying thank you.
Back to the cloning again, yes. Lily
Cat Baby says, gout. All of a sudden, I know 3 people of differing ages with gout. What's causing it?
Well, there's a classic thing of, the kind of portly gentleman who's drinking alcohol and is the lord of the manor.
Port. Very fine port, doesn't it?
Well, blood sugar again. Control your blood sugar. You go a long way to helping that.
Right.
There's a lot more, which is very grapeseed extract. There's all sorts of things that people generally take to reduce inflammation. There's a whole lot of biochemistry you can talk about, but I don't think we've got enough time for that. But I would suggest balanced blood sugar. Very, very important. And when you come down to it, there's very simple things you do with patients. If you do them, you can sort a lot of stuff out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Dee Oberman didn't say twice the size of her first meal. She said twice the size of her fist.
What? Okay. Yeah.
Sorry,
okay.
I misread.
Yeah, portion size is, a piece of meat the size of your fist, maybe. There's all these kind of clever... Try not to, although, obsess on that, not suggesting she is. Mm-hmm. If you eat good, nutrient-dense food and have protein at every meal, and also have some good fat. Fat is very good for you. Don't think fat isn't good for you. Saturated fat is not the demon it's been made out to be. That's a whole other discussion, Have good, healthy fats. Coconut oil, virgin coconut oil, you can pour that on your food and take it down. It's absolutely lovely for you. Really, really good for you. Good for the brain. Good for people with dementia as well, because someone asked about balance of blood sugar. Have about 5 tablespoons of coconut oil a day if you've got dementia. 2 in the morning when you wake up, 3 spread throughout the rest of the day. And other stuff as well, which I haven't got time to get into. Ginkgo biloba, that's good. Gets the brain working. Gets helps oxygenate the brain. Feverview is another one. All the things they're trying to take off the shelves, which work.
Yes. What do they call it? Substantive equivalent or something?
Yeah.
Is what they.
Oh, forget it. Yeah. Vimpo-C-type. There's all clever stuff that people use, and lots of colleagues now do oxygen therapy. People exercise with oxygen therapy. That's really good. People need to get more oxygen. We don't have as much oxygen as we used to in the atmosphere. You need to exercise. You need to get oxygen to your brain.
Brilliant. I've got one more.
One more.
I can't pronounce it again. It's the same word. What is the doctor's view on ayahuasca as a health/psychologically healing medicine?
Ayurvedic medicine. Done it. Tell me that.
Ayahuasca. It's that stuff David Icke took in South America.
Oh, okay.
Ayahuasca. That's it. Ayahuasca.
Well, there's 2 sides of that. I'm trained quite heavily in yoga, not the one where you put your peg around your neck and you strangle yourself, but the one that comes from the Himalayas.
Right.
And they will have a very different view about what that does. Now, that's a little bit too exotic to maybe get into here. I don't want to frighten people before they go to bed. But I personally wouldn't take it for that reason, which I haven't told you because it's a bit scary. But hey, listen, whatever floats your boat. If I don't have any personal experience of using it from a biochemical point of view. But I think when it comes to spiritual experiences and stuff, I think you want to keep it clean and pure.
Yeah.
If you start using other things to get you into certain states, then you may be open to things you don't want to be open to. However, it's not my business what people do.
That's it.
I never tell people what to do.
No, absolutely.
Thank you.
Anyway, there was one other topic we wanted to get to, which was very touchy subject of vaccinations.
Oh, well, yeah.
Because what was written in the AV5 literature says, seeing as each year passes, our children are required to have more and more vaccinations. With all the controversy over side effects, is there a danger to them? And if so, is there an alternative? I mean, that was the question posed, basically. So, I mean, again, it's one of these things that people are very sensitive about. And certainly... We know all the controversy that followed the MMR and the fact that Andrew Wakefield was eventually found actually to be right about this, but nobody's heard that in the mainstream. So, I mean, with skirting around the edges of this, what are the alternatives to vaccination then?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I was heavily grounded in immunology at King's College, and I was actually invited to do a PhD at the leading lab in Oxford, and be amongst probably the top 5 scientists in the world in this area. So I have some experience. I didn't take that up, by the way. I did a different. However, having said that, for me, with patients, I never tell them what to do. I always say, I'll give you some information, and then you go speak to your GP and you make your mind up. It's not our business, it's your business, it's your children. I am convinced of the literature that it is no good for you. I am convinced that it's causing lots and lots of problems. And I'm also convinced by the data that there are very safe alternatives, one of which is called homeoprophylaxis, which I showed a lot of data at the conference on, and we have data with 2.5 million people being administered by medical allopathic professionals, nurses, GPs, a big study in Cuba. And it absolutely flummoxed everyone involved in it because they thought it was going to be a damp squid. And it absolutely flattened a horrible disease. It's been done several times in Cuba and around the world. And I showed data for the last 200 years on it. And all it involves is taking a sugar pill. And the only side effect is you don't get a side effect.
Right. And
it works, you're up in the 95% range of how it works, which is as good as or better than any vaccine I've ever heard of. And I've got nothing against Big Pharma. They want to make vaccines and people want to take it, great. But their arguments, each one can be pulled apart very easily, which the arguments they try and scare people into and making anyone who doesn't have a vaccine, you must be very bad. No, you're not. You've actually got your head screwed on right. And they're definitely an alternative. That's my view, based on the data that I've seen. Someone can show me different data, I may change that mind.
But I mean, this is the thing. It's always in every case that we're talking about here. It's in consultation with your GP, and I mean, it's almost like and I found this with my duty nurse, if you like, is you're educating them and explaining to them where the literature is, and you go in with a ream of paperwork, etc., to say, have you seen this? What is your verdict on this? How does that affect your evaluation of the safety? And it's almost like upwards education here. It's coming from the grassroots into the system.
My experience is I don't go looking for trouble. I'm certainly not that kind of person. And they have a right to what they want to do. And it's not my business. But I have been put into a corner on many an occasion by consultants from Great Ormond Street, and from GPs, and not one of them's lasted 5 minutes when you actually discuss the facts, and which is great, because if you speak the truth. And trust me, I've tried to get out of the argument. I've tried to walk away from it, but I've not been allowed to, and unfortunately, I've had to, give it to them basically. And and I kid you not, now someone who's heading up a big children's hospital, which I won't say where, literally after 5 minutes said, I don't understand it.
Really?
And I've had that response many, many times. They're not really trained. They are fantastic clinicians. They do great at what they do. But if they haven't got that information, it doesn't matter how clever you are. You're living in a void. They need to have that information. They're intelligent people, doctors. You give them the right information, and you'll see them change. But someone needs to show it to them. And that's the problem, getting them to see it.
So, I mean, we've had some fairly sort of DoomWatch-esque material here, saying we've got 7 years to sort this out. But certainly from what you've been saying, there is hope, but it's a question of change.
And also, will we be allowed to use it? Because more and more laws coming in,
didn't you say something about vitamin C's? They're trying to sort of actually...
Well, I did hear that, and you start to think, my God, you hear this to the point where you won't even be able to talk about it. It'll be an offence to talk about this stuff. My response to that is, well, fine. Well, then what have you got to put in its place? If you've got something, great. But I looked at the research, and I don't think they've got anything. They've not rolled anything out en masse and tried it. I mean, they've got ideas. They really don't have anything to deal with it. And our camp actually does have good stuff that deals with infection, and it's been doing it for many, many years. And people like us now starting to speak up and starting to train other doctors and starting to work with people so that they can stay alive. I mean, who wants to die from an ear infection?
No.
And that's going to be not everyone's going to die from an ear infection, but that will start happening.
It's going to be that sort of standard of thing.
Absolutely. If you haven't got, and also there'll be no doctors, because half of them will be dropping down from infection, and no one's going to go near a hospital, for love nor money.
Crazy stuff.
It is crazy stuff.
Well, Dr. Graham Downing, thank you very much for joining us live and direct in the studio. As you said to us in one of the breaks, it's just flown. Don't know where that 2 hours has gone. Join us again next week, same time, 6 till 8 p.m. Friday, when our guest, fingers crossed, providing he can get a stable Skype connection wherever he is in the world, will be Patrick Henningsen. See you then.